Hello, it is March 18th, 2025, and I just completed the Emerald City of Oz, and it is the sixth book that I'm about to review of the series. And if you haven't seen my other reviews, you can look them up in my live section. It's the Wizard of Oz collection, and there's 15 books, 14 of which, this is a very nice collection, by the way. And there's 14 that were written by the main author, L. Frank Baum, and the 15th is a different author after his death that completed the series. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. That started the writing of the series by other people. So this book so far, to me, is the weakest of the books. I've got paint on my hands from painting my facilities outside, but this to me was the weakest book and perhaps the most thought-provoking book out of the batch. So the reason that is the weakest is because it had the intro subplot of Auntie M and the uncle coming to Oz, which really had nothing to do with the main storyline at all. So it's not much of a spoiler because they get to Oz and they talk about Oz and how great it is there and everything. And then you find out it's really not that great there. And it kind of is like a parallel to perhaps people wanting to come to the United States, this shining city on a hill, and it's really not as great as people might think it is once they get there. Because one of the neighboring peoples is digging a tunnel and they're going to attack Oz and destroy it and take over. So that really is introduced as the main storyline. And then you go for about 2/3 of it or more with brainless, directionless new characters with goofy names and weird incidences that don't make any sense. Like this lady says she cuts off her finger, and then she says, well, it's not really cut off. I just pricked it with a needle sewing, but I'm going to get a blood infection and lose my finger. And then they said, no, you're not going to lose your finger. And I'm sitting there going, what does this have to do with anything? It's just bizarre, some of the stuff in there. And then you finally get to the end where they're going to, and this is a spoiler, but if you're going to read it, maybe don't listen. But if you're not, then you'll hear what's going to happen. So the guy finally gets to Oz and he's going to take over. But at the last minute, somebody says, oh, by the way, there's a forbidden fountain that's got water in it that if you drink the water, it turns you into a memoryless buffoon, basically, that doesn't, you won't even know what your evil intentions were in the first place. So, of course, they get there and they're digging through this dirt tunnel and they're thirsty. And a bunch of the soldiers drink the water, and then they're like, ignorance is bliss. And their main general's mad because they won't do his bidding because they're all just happy now. And it really was thought-provoking because that ignorance is bliss thing is not true in a lot of ways. In our country here, there's a lot of uninformed people that don't follow politics, but yet they still get to vote anyway. And according to the founding fathers, to have a successful democracy, you need to have a well-educated electorate. So this Doge thing and Elon Musk and Trump trying to destroy the Department of Education, you may want to look up what the purpose of that department was in the first place. Clearly, it was created for the betterment of the people that live in this country and to raise the level of education for its citizens. And it's been highly successful, right, for people that don't have a lot of resources that they can get educated and produce something out of themselves, where prior to that, maybe all they had an option to do is work in a factory or something if they could find a factory job. And a lot of the people that are mad at the politicians and the system in America, are mad because the factories have gone away and they don't have a means to support themselves and things of that nature. And I hate to tell you, there's no politician that's going to come in and wave his magic wand and solve your immediate problem. On the other hand, your children can get properly educated through grants and loans that were established by the Department of Education that can allow them to rise up and do better than yourself. And perhaps instead of being mad at the system, you should understand what the system's for, and all those people at the Department of Education helping people raise up their children so that they are not at the mercy of the highly rich that can pay to go to Princeton or Harvard or wherever they want to go. If you don't have a gob of money and you cannot afford to go to Princeton or Harvard, and they're not just going to randomly let you in because your name is not important to them, you need the Department of Education, or at least your children do. And if you don't care about your children more than yourself, you're already screwed up. So that is the electorate. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to understanding the world and your nation and the things that are designed the way they are, and the people that tried to help you and your future generation ahead of yourself. Those people tried to help you, and to rage against them, the people that tried to help you because you're not doing good, because you chose not to become properly educated, that's your own fault. So it also got me thinking about this fountain of forbidden fountain where you drink it and you don't know what's going on anymore. It also reminded me about scriptures. When you go to heaven, it says all the tears will be wiped from your eyes. And I've often wondered what that meant. Are we going to receive like a spiritual lobotomy where we don't know what happened on earth? Are we going to know our spouses and family members, or is all of that gone? I don't know the answer to that question, obviously. But I hope it's more akin to the wounds that you received on this planet are taken away and the positive experiences are allowed to remain. And that's kind of what they tried to infer with this forbidden fountain. And I guess there's later books in this series. I think there's one even called The Forbidden Fountain in here, maybe. The Magic of the Lost Princess. That's bizarre because the wiki page mentioned the Forbidden Fountain like it was going to be in a later series, but I don't see one called the Forbidden Fountain, so maybe. Anyway, I'm going to be on book 7 shortly. But the crisis and resolution of this story were very short-lived, and most of it was a bunch of gobbledygook. And you could tell that the writer was burned out. He never intended this to be a long-term series. I'm going to read you the last page of this because it's kind of interesting. The writer of these Oz stories has received a little note from Princess Dorothy of Oz, which for a time has made him feel rather disconcerted. The note was written on a broad white feather from a stork's wing, and it said, "You will never hear anything more about Oz because we are now cut off forever from the rest of the world." Now that part is because at the end they sealed up the tunnel and they adopted an isolationist strategy, which we know in history that trying to stay an isolationist political position doesn't work. So this America First stuff, it's already been tried before. It doesn't work. But anyway, they go to isolationism in this book. But Toto and I will always love you and all the other children who love us, Dorothy Gale. This seemed to me too bad at first, for Oz is a very interesting fairyland. Still, we have no right to feel grieved, for we've had enough of the history of the land of Oz to fill 6 storybooks. And from its quaint people and their strange adventures, we've been able to learn many useful and amusing things. So good luck to Dorothy and her companions. May they live long in the invisible country and be very happy. And actually, the Good Witch made the country also invisible so that no one could basically harass them anymore, which is more of that isolationism. So there's a lot of geopolitical stuff in here. And I was reading on the wiki page, some people even say some socialist leanings, perhaps. I didn't catch that so much. I caught the isolationism and the ignorance is bliss themes. So it was thought provoking, but there wasn't much to the story. It was just an intro, useless event, then the main crisis, and then a bunch of gobbledygook, and then a very, very quick resolution at the end. And I think this is my least favorite of all the books. One of the prior 5 books I'd read earlier also didn't have really a plot, but it was more fun than this one. So this one, when they're talking about the lady that lost her finger, then she's going on, well, yeah, now I'm probably going to lose my foot. And then somebody said, maybe you're going to even lose your head. There's a lot of weird stuff in this book. And again, it seemed like there's some drug influence on this stuff. People compared this series to the Harry Potter series of its day, saying that this is somehow, comparable to that series from now, and it's not as good. I'm just convinced at this point it's not as good.